GM. GM. Good fucking morning. What an excellent morning to be a bull, not a filthy bear. What a good morning to be a bull in a bull market. Almost like that's all you need to do. So, the higher this goes, the more bullish it is, not the more bearish. Bears are now resorting to coping. It's torn through every logical resistance, and this to me is setting up for a breakout. It might just go straight there. It is pretty much one way up, and I would expect some kind of pullback from there. But the shorts on Bybit, Binance, and OKX have just been getting absolutely crushed. And if we look across the funding rates, we look at OI Global, funding rate global, part of our regular morning analysis. A sneak preview of what I have in bull market workflow lesson coming very soon. Maybe even today, hopefully today. Next few days I'm just going to be... These past few days I've been very heavily trading on lower time frames. Been managing a couple of scalp and day trade positions. Now I've got myself positioned nicely. And I just want to let the market do its thing. I think the tendency you'll have here is to think that the market is too high and needs to pull back. And obviously, that's likely, right? I don't think that we're going to go straight up and break out and go to new highs and stay there. I would think that if it did push all the way, and make no mistake, this is an aggressive squeeze. And if anyone tries to short, this is the thing. Shorts are going to keep shorting. Because when people are wrong, they just can't admit it. That's one of the hardest things for traders to admit, and it's what loses more money than anything. If you were shorting and your invalidation was 45 and then you get stopped out, guess what? When price drops back down, you're like, oh, I was right, I was just too early. Then you start shorting again, and then you just get fucking wrecked. That's why, so often, you have the first sell-off, and then you have the spike, right? In every, whether it's a top or even just a reaccumulation, you have the first top here. People shorted this. I remember, I was laughing. People were shorting this. Shorted, and shorted here, and shorted here, and shorted here, and shorted. Oh, that's it. 35 rejected, down we go to 30, and it just blasts them out. Then they short again, blast them out. Then they short again, blast them out. Same thing's going to happen here. It's a bull market. So, what you need to be careful of as a trader is purely your long exposure, anything to do with leverage. If you're just buying spot and holding, and then adding your long trades at breakouts, retests, accumulations, not like adding them here. This is obviously not a good place to add along. You will play the bull market better than 90% of people. If you just don't fucking short, you will outperform 90% of people in the next year and a half. Because there's zero upside to shorting. You're shorting against the trend. And you can't make 100x on a short. You can't make 5x. You can't make 10x. You can on longs. Put all that mental energy into longs. And so this move has basically gone pretty much exactly as expected from all the way down here, where after this breakout I said upward sloping accumulation, and we got exactly that. And then we broke out higher and we talked about the pivots. 34.9 acted as a great pivot, 40.8 acted as a perfect pivot, and 48 acted as the top. On the day of the ETF, said that's probably a top. At the bottom, which was the Tuesday, talked about how there's a turnaround Tuesday that happens in Wall Street, reversals, got long. So every single part of this move, I personally have played really well. And that's not to pat myself on the back. That is actually a reminder to be humble. Because in the past I've done this and I felt really smug, and I've ended up taking my eye off the ball and losing money in previous cycles. So right now, I'm resisting any temptation to try and tell the market where to go. The tendency, and at least how I would have been before, is to look at this and say, oh, 4 big green candles going up into resistance, time to de-risk or get short or fade it. No. To me, this is a sign of extreme strength. Now, it doesn't mean that you just automatically go long here, right? That's not the play. But I think simple levels are going to work best on this. So where we've just broken out from, this consolidation is obviously the must hold level now. And 45k had been the pretty solid resistance point. So 44.7, we got above it, back below it, above it, back below it, touched it there, hit it here. So pullbacks can come for sure. But to me, this is actually falling within a perfect time frame to just grind higher into a breakout. And it's actually looking at, it reminds me a little bit of the 2021 move, which isn't on this fucking chart because it doesn't go back far enough. It actually reminds me a bit of this move, where it was 31 days. And if you remember, I think it was weekly outlook or monthly preview, I talked about this. If the breakout, if there's going to be a 50k move above all that, it's probably going to happen in the first half of the month. That's very common for Bitcoin to do its directional move in the first half of the month because of options. After the first half of the month, it's harder for BTC to continue rallying. It can, if there's momentum. But generally it does most of its move at the beginning of the month, like you even see here. 1st of January, rallies all the way up until the 8th, then consolidates and goes sideways till the end of the month. Start of the next month, goes up. It's very somewhat predictable. You can't predict the direction, but you can say that Bitcoin tends to move most at the beginning of the month if it's going to move. So what I was looking at here is you have to break down these areas and remember how people were, because I traded all the way through this obviously, and remember how people were approaching this. So bears were absolutely euphoric here. I remember it well. This was the lower high, right? That was the complacency bounce. They're saying you're an idiot. Now it's going down, it's going to zero. They were short, they were adding to their shorts. Every bounce up, there's another opportunity to add to your shorts. Look at this, you're an absolute idiot if you're long. Then the spike up happens and they say, oh, that was just a short squeeze, still going down. And then it starts to kind of grind higher. And at this point here, which I think is a bit like what we're doing now, this is where people try to fade. But the actual move is already set. We're breaking out. And I talked about this in the monthly preview, and it's one of my main sort of, you could call it a prediction, but to me it's obvious. There's going to be big buyers that are announcing they've bought Bitcoin. And it's going to be after a dip. So back in 21, that was when Tesla announced. Tesla announced they bought Bitcoin here, and that's what caused that next pump. But they had been buying in this dip. This dip to me looks very, very similar. The price action is not identical. The timing is everything. We're 29 days now, so we're getting up to that 30-day mark. We're still in the first half of the month. And I wouldn't be surprised if you hear about some big buyer who's gotten into Bitcoin and is now coming out to support it. And then you start, we're getting close to just 2 months away from the halving. And then there's very little reason for people to sell. To me, and I'm not always right, for sure I'm not always right, but to me, bears have had their chance. That was it. We took out the lows, came back, and it's up again. It doesn't mean, as I said, up only. If there's too many leverage longs getting long in here, we'll absolutely flush them out. Right? We might have to go for more consolidation. There won't be free rides necessarily. The free ride was getting long near the bottom and riding it up, and you've probably had a free ride all the way to here. Less likely to be so as we go higher. But Whether it breaks out now or breaks out later or whatever, I think this move, the strength of this move, confirms to me that the bottom's in, and that we don't go lower than that 38 level. It doesn't mean we can't swing back around again for another retest, which I also think is unlikely, because you have to remember the market doesn't have to do anything that you say or that you want it to do. And the simplest way to play a bull, and this is what I fucked up when I was newer at trading, it's a bull market. It should go up, right? So in a bull market, it doesn't need a reason to go up, because it's a bull market. If it's below all-time high and it's a bull market, the reason it's going up is because it should be here. That's it. And that's how traders and investors think. In a bullish market, it will trend towards the all-time high. There needs to be really valid reasons for it to go down, not up. So for it to sell off, there needs to be reasons. And those reasons are usually like ETF, sell the news, some people exiting, right? People closing their trades from the ETF rally. And then if you have major bearish catalysts, like the Fed raises rates instead of cutting them, which doesn't seem likely, or global liquidity really worsens, which it's doing the opposite, it's getting stronger, or stablecoin flows into crypto go negative, which they're not, they're still positive and have been up only for several weeks, and they're still not at the previous peak, so there's plenty of sideline capital to come back in. Those are all the things that matter more. And so the default in a bull market is that we're bullish and that we go up. At the same time, you have to be mindful that we can easily flush here, right? Any of these late longers, we could go sideways for a bit, big wick down, and then away it goes. So you have to separate the trading from the holding. We can also, which is not out of the question, we can also go down all the way back to 40 and set a trap and then go from there. Sort of a double bottom, or just fill the gap or whatever. Don't think that is likely. I think the strength of this move has said otherwise, and I think that the people who didn't, we did, thankfully. We bought more here, bought AKT, bought Ethereum, then swapped the Ethereum into Bitcoin. That was the chance to load up on some spot, because you just buy spot when other people are bearish. You buy when it doesn't feel like it, in a bull market after a correction. You don't have to wait for 30-40% corrections, because that's what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin doesn't do that. Bitcoin used to do that, but now it's less volatile because there's more players in it and all the billions from TradFi.